Hi everybody, I'm Michael Feinstein and welcome to In the Archives. Here we are again in Carmel, Indiana at the Great American Songbook Foundation, and it is always fun to pull artifacts from our collection and share them with you, because treasures are revealed not only to you but to me as well, because as this collection grows incrementally, there are all sorts of things that appear that I didn't even know that we had in this collection. Today we're going to look at artifacts from the collection of Irwin Costell, whose name might not be familiar to you, but he is seminal in the history of, I guess, of theater and film music, because he is responsible most notably for the orchestrations on Broadway, co-orchestrating West Side Story and then working on the film, and also for Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music. And doing those orchestrations, particularly for the films, made him one of the richest arrangers in Hollywood. And when one of his compatriots said to him, "Irv, how does it feel to be the richest arranger in Hollywood?" he said, "Good." You see, he started from very humble beginnings, and this is an example of how music can lead one on a path that is quite extraordinary. And Irwin, who was called Irv by his friends, was very facile, a very genial man who knew how to work well with others, and he also was very quick at what he did. Because he worked for years on Broadway, he had to get into the rhythm of writing very, very quickly, and it also had to be good. And when one works on a Broadway musical, especially when it's out of town in the tryout phase, there are many permutations that happen with the show where things have to be rewritten very, very quickly. And he proved that he was very facile, but also could give everybody what they wanted. And that is an art unto itself. He also worked for years on television, on weekly variety shows, which were live, and had to create music sometimes on the fly. What we have in this collection is a bunch of material that was given to me by Irwin Costell's son, Irwin Jr., and of course I brought it here to the foundation. And it examines different periods of his life. Later in his life, he did write a book called From Ragtime to Riches, which was never published, but is an extremely valuable source for not only documenting his career, but a particular aspect of show business. Now, one of the first major jobs that Irwin Costell had in Hollywood was working on the film version of West Side Story, and it was conducted by Johnny Green, who was another man whom I knew in addition to Irv. And there was a lot of controversy at the time Johnny had conducted the soundtrack of West Side Story, because he did it in collaboration with Jerome Robbins, who had choreographed West Side Story on Broadway and was working on the film, and he evidently led Johnny astray. And Johnny had a listening party in which he invited the glitterati of Hollywood to listen to these new recordings for the film, and Bernstein, Leonard Bernstein, the composer of West Side Story, was there, and he didn't like at all what he heard, and it was sort of a scandal, and it was humiliating for Johnny. And they then had to fix all of the arrangements, and did, of course, but it's sort of legendary in the Bernstein legend. But what we have here are some wonderful notes and letters from Leonard Bernstein to Irwin Costell. And one of these bits of correspondence concerns the film Fantasia, which was made in 1940 and conducted by Leopold Stokowski and the Philadelphia Orchestra. Well, in the late 70s, early 80s, the Walt Disney Company decided that the soundtrack needed to be re-recorded in modern digital sound, and they enlisted Irwin Costell to create a new soundtrack for this 1940 film. So he had to reconduct all of the classical music featured in Fantasia in new versions that had to completely synchronize with the images on screen. So he sent a letter to his friend Leonard Bernstein asking specific questions about the different pieces he was going to conduct in Fantasia. For example, in Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, do you double the reeds? And Bernstein wrote the answers in the margin. Yes, if only, especially in the storm. Do you insist on the B-flat horns? No. Do you insist on the trumpets in C? No. And so on and so forth. So it's a wonderful bit of collaborative information. This little note accompanied it. Dear Irwin, so good to hear from you, exclamation point. This is from Bernstein to Costell. I answered as well as I can, meaning that I can't always do the same thing, doublings, etc., since life is a process of change. No? This is another letter from Leonard Bernstein to Kostal, and it's in reference to an arrangement that Irwin Costell did of the Bernstein composition Mass, which was written by Bernstein with Stephen Schwartz's lyrics for the opening of the Kennedy Center. Well, Kostal was asked to make an instrumental version of the Mass for Arthur Fiedler to record with the Boston Pops, and this is a letter from Bernstein to Kostal congratulating him on the wonderful job that he did on that film. During the time that Kostal was working for Disney, and he also conducted Mary Poppins and arranged all the music, some of the Disney artists did little sketches of him in action. So these are Disney drawings of Irwin Costell. This is a letter from Carol Burnett to Kostal's wife Sylvia, because Kostal did a lot of work with Carol Burnett early in her career, and they were very, very close. And so it's just another bit of ephemera that helps to tell the story about the collaboration of two greats. So all of this is important for researchers. It's important for people who care about the preservation of this music, because as we now look back in time, we realize that we don't know a lot about how certain things were created for films and for shows. And it is the human touch of all of this ephemera that helps us to understand more about the creative process. So that's a little bit about Irwin Costell, and I hope that someday that we'll be able to have a full-on exhibit of his work, because he certainly deserves it. So thank you for joining us here in the archives, and I'll see you real soon.